Welcome to Discovering Nutrition with Cronometer. I am your host and community marketing manager, Elisa, and today we are thrilled to have on very special guest, Dr. Brandon Marcello. Dr. Marcello has over 25 years experience in the performance enhancement industry, driving forward-thinking, cutting-edge strategies across a variety of human performance portfolios. He has extensive involvement in both the applied and research worlds and has implemented successful high-performance training programs for professional, Olympic, and collegiate athletes. As always, this podcast is for general purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including getting medical advice. The use of information from this podcast is at the user's own risk and is not to be substituted for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Within 2 minutes of talking to Brandon, I had already learned a new hack for my Apple Watch to check out my own performance. So we can't wait to dive into this episode with you. We'll just jump right in. So my first question, and it's one that we get all the time with Cronometer because people really care about accuracy when they're tracking with Cronometer, and that's why they choose us, is how reliable is data from a wearable? Obviously, depending on the wearable, that would make a difference for the reliability. But as a general overview, how reliable is data coming from a watch?
It depends on the data, and it depends on, we spoke about this briefly, how you wear it.
Right.
There are actual instructions on how to wear it. Now, the instructions are vague, right? Not too tight, not too loose, whatever that means. But where you wear it, the tightness in which you wear it can impact the noise, if you will, and thus the accuracy, reliability of the device. I think the thing to remember is that just because a device is on the market, it doesn't mean it's 100% perfect, because it's not going to be. So there is a lot of error inherently with these devices. And then also, to take it another level, if we're using heart rate, for example, resting heart rate from a watch is pretty decent. But when you start to exercise and exert yourself, all of a sudden now the error starts to grow and grow and grow and grow, right? Depending on the device. So, but we're talking watch. So yeah, that can be a big issue.
One of the interesting things that Brandon told me was, because I wanted, when we initially had our call, I was like, "Can you just give me like a tip about the watch?" And then he was like, "How tight is it?" Because I sent him my data from my recovery heart rate, and it was not very good. And he was like, "How tight is that watch?" So since then, I have tightened my watch, and I do get better data. So that's been illuminating. Can you talk to the recovery heart rate that you were telling me about on my Apple Watch? Because I know we got a ton of people that use the Apple Watch. What is that little feature that you told me about?
Yeah, so it's my favorite feature on the Apple Watch. It's probably one of the only reasons why I use the Apple Watch for exercise. So I typically pair my Apple Watch with a heart rate strap that you wear around your chest, so I can get better accuracy, because those chest heart rate straps are much, much more accurate when it comes to exercise, monitoring exercise heart rate. So when you complete a workout, whatever workout you choose, outdoor walk, outdoor run, cycle, yoga, whatever you choose, when you hit end on your watch, the heart rate still continues to measure. And if you click on the little heart icon and scroll all the way down, you'll see this thing that says recovery. And with it, you'll have two numbers. It'll say, give you a number, and it'll say beats per minute after 1 minute. And then it'll give you right below, it'll give you another one that says beats per minute after 2 minutes. So it's essentially giving you your 1 minute and 2 minute heart rate recovery. And what that really is an indication of is the faster one can recover after exercise, the fitter, or the more fit, more fit?
Either or.
You're in better shape.
Okay? They both work.
Yeah. So the faster your heart rate drops after exercise, the better in shape you are from an aerobic standpoint. So your aerobic fitness is better. It's more enhanced.
And will that vary from day to day? So for example, the one day after 1 minute, it was like 28 beats a minute. And then 2 days later, when I felt more rested and I had a break in between my running, it was 38 beats a minute after 1 minute. So is that something that's going to be changing based on how recovered you are, or sleep, or nutrition, or tell me about that?
100%. That will all change. It can change based upon the type of exercise in which you're performing. It can change how intense your exercise is. It will change based upon your hydration levels. It will change based upon your sleep levels, as you mentioned. It'll change based upon the outside environment. So if it's like, for instance, if it's a really, really hot day, and your body is still expending a lot of energy trying to thermoregulate, your heart rate is going to be a little bit higher than it normally would be, and will not decrease as fast as it usually would in a like an air conditioned space, or a less humid and cooler outside environment. So yeah, temperature, environment, sleep, stress, right? There's a myriad of physiological variables which can change and alter that. The big one is that most of the research on heart rate recovery ties in with like cardiovascular risk, right? How healthy one's heart is. And what they've done is when they put people on these max treadmill tests, right? These stress tests where you run on a treadmill and every 3 minutes it increases in speed and grade, right? And you run till you cannot run anymore. Then they start the clock and they measure your 2 minute heart rate recovery. And if it is lower, say than like 12 beats per minute after 1 minute, then that shows that you potentially might be at risk for a cardiovascular event in the future, right? You may have some heart disease. And then there's a number for 2 minute recovery as well. So that's where a lot of this comes from. But just in general population, when you're at home doing a workout, it's a great little spot check to see, hey, am I getting better? Am I getting better in shape? Am I responding well to the exercise stimulus that I'm trying to do?
How long would it take for something like that to actually change? Because you and I were also talking about trends and how looking at trends can be one of the most valuable things about using a wearable. How quickly should I see progress if I'm running often? Or how do I know if I'm actually improving, if it's so dependent on all of these different variables? Is that a trend to look at?
Yeah, like you said, watch the trend, right? Watch over time, kind of like a stock market, right? It's up and down, but over time, hopefully it's heading in the upward direction. Hopefully, while these numbers of 1 minute and 2 minute heart rate recovery might change, hopefully it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and growing over time, right? So typically, when it comes to endurance exercise, there is an initial change in blood plasma volume. So meaning you get more water in your blood, okay? The long-term effects, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, you'll start to see these changes of more capillaries in your body, which means blood gets to the tissues easier. You will see changes in your heart anatomy, right? So your chambers will get bigger. You'll also have more red blood cells. You'll also have more mitochondria. So what that means is you have better ability to work aerobically. So all of these things put together in one giant bowl gives you an increased endurance or increased fitness overall.
So you were saying that that's about 7 to 8 weeks. What happens if somebody, okay, I'm going to use myself as an example. I run consistently throughout the year, but we get a lot of snow in Revelstoke, and I certainly run a lot more in, the spring, summer, fall than I do in the winter. So in the winter, my run volume drops down to, 2 or 3 days. Am I able to maintain my cardio that way? Or because I'm doing less, because I normally run, 6 to 7 days a week, am I able to maintain, or am I going to lose some because my training volume has gone down?
If the primary stimulus is still there, it doesn't have to be every day. You should be in a good spot. The issue is when you do nothing, right? If you have to shut it down for an extended period of time, you can lose a significant amount of those adaptations in doing absolutely nothing for 10 days. You can lose up to 80% of those adaptations in 10 days by doing zero, right? Now that's zero, okay? We do get up, we do move around, right? So that's the downside. We tend to lose our fitness very, very fast. But on the other hand, we tend to lose our strength very, very slowly.
So people going on vacation. That one's for you guys. Get into the gym at least once when you're on vacation.
Yeah, when people go on vacation, they're walking around, right? I mean, so there is some sort of stimulus there that is present, right? So you got to remember, this is when I say nothing, I mean like you're bedridden for 10 days.
Okay. That's good to know, because I always am able to like jump back into things fairly quickly. And I'm like, yeah, your cardio is not too bad, but I'd have to look at my heart rate trends and that kind of thing to see if I just feel good or if I actually am good.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really emerged lately that everyone in the tracking space, I think, is using is heart rate variability, or HRV. From what I understand, and you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the number that a lot of wearables are using to determine someone's readiness. You know, I've worn the Oura Ring for years, and every morning, based on several factors, I'm assuming my sleep and my HRV, it's telling me how hard I should send it, basically. I don't listen to that, but maybe I should. Can you speak to heart rate variability and why people should look at that, or should people not look at it at all because it's not accurate?
So heart rate variability is essentially when your heart beats, there is an irregularity to that heartbeat, right? It's not like every second there's a beat, right? If you beat 60 times in a minute, it's not like it's every second. There is a little bit of difference there. Some beats are a little bit longer. Some beats are going to be a little bit shorter. They do vary. There is an ebb and flow to these heart rates. And that variability between the beats is what makes up this thing called heart rate variability. What people have been associating it with with the term readiness is they believe, or it's said, that it's a measurement of stress. More specifically, it's the stress of your autonomic nervous system. So what the autonomic nervous system is, it's your automatic nervous system. And that's broken up into two divisions. You have a sympathetic side, which is this fight or flight, which is like if a tiger jumps out at you and you get really scared, right? Pupils dilate, your heartbeat increases, you get a peach pit in your stomach. All of these, you get maybe cold sweat, something like that. That is the sympathetic side. The parasympathetic side, which is the other division of the autonomic nervous system, is this what they call the rest and digest. It's where you and I are right now, right? Everything's calm. Our heart rate hopefully is low. Our blood pressure is low. Blood flow is going to all of the organs, especially the digestive system, to digest. Me, I just had like a smoothie, so I'm digesting that, those sides. And what we happen to have is when we are more stressed, we become out of balance, more in favor of the sympathetic side. So that means our heart rate is increased, our blood pressure increases, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of things can impact that balance between the two, right? Sleep, stress, inflammation, whatever, even exercise, right? So when people look at this HRV number, they're saying, wow, if my heart rate variability is a lower number, 20, 30, 40, whatever, making those numbers up, that means I'm probably more stressed. If it's higher, 80, 90, 100, then I'm perhaps less stressed from an autonomic nervous system standpoint. The danger with that number is that it's a very noisy and very dirty and very muddled number. It is not quite as cut and dry as in sympathetic, parasympathetic, because all of these things, all of different organ systems are impacted differently by the nervous system at different times. So I might have more sympathetic tone at my heart, but I may have also more parasympathetic tone at my digestive system. It's not like an all or none. It's not a light switch. And this is the number in which I would look at trends, right? To say, okay, so when I got up this morning, I looked at my Oura Ring as well, and I think I was like 79, my HRV. Okay. That's okay for me. That's probably right around the average. I bounce anywhere between 77 and like 90. Like I live in there. Sometimes it drops a little bit lower. Sometimes it drops significantly lower, but then I try to add context to that number. Why did that number drop, right? Is it because I traveled? Is it because I didn't get much sleep? Is it because I had a late dinner? Is it because I had some alcohol and had 2 glasses of, Chianti last night? Is it because I'm stressed because of a work deadline? Whatever the answer is, that's when you kind of go back and look at it and say, okay, why is that number low? If you can unpack that and say, my Oura ring might say, Brandon, you shouldn't be working out today. You're not ready. But if working out for me or you is like your happy place, where you can de-stress and not think about anything, the last thing you need to do is not work out, right? That's probably the first thing you should do. So you really have to unpack that heart rate variability number. It's not as clean cut as it is. It's an interesting number. It's one that I would watch the trends and then start to try and add context to your data. And I don't know if I just made things more confusing, but yeah.
I don't think that you did. I think that was great.
Okay.
From what I understand, though, it's pretty individualistic, because I was talking about this with one of our staff members yesterday, and she's like, my HRV number, because we both wear the Oura ring, she was like, mine doesn't get much above like 60. And I was like, oh boy. So I looked at mine, and mine is typically over 100 all the time. Like from I think it's on average from 85 to like 130. Like mine's going everywhere. So is it like my cardio is that much better than this person's because mine's higher? Or is it simply like because we're different people?
It is because you're different people. It's very individual. So like I told you, mine is like somewhere between 77 and 93. Mm-hmm. My wife's every single morning is 255. Every morning, right? If she has a cold, it might drop to 240, but then she's back up at 255. What does that mean? Is she going to live forever? Probably. But what it means is she already has a very low resting heart rate, right?
Yes.
And she's exercises all the time. So any variance in that low heart rate is going to be magnified. So heart rate variability is a very individual number. You should not compare it to anybody else. Yeah, you should watch your own trends over time. It's influenced by fitness. It's influenced by stress and how you metabolize stress. And it's also influenced by your genetics and how well you chose your mom and dad, right? So all of those things play into your HRV number and where that's going to live. Yes, there are things that can increase it, right? Meditation, we know, will increase it over time. Exercise will increase it over time. Mindfulness will increase it over time, right? All of these things that help you offload or metabolize stress will help with that. Decreasing inflammation will increase heart rate variability over time, right? So yeah, it's a very individualized number that's influenced by a lot of things.
You also highlighted something that I really appreciated. When I was wearing the Oura ring, it would tell me a readiness score. And I know that other wearables use like body batteries and that kind of terminology, but basically it's telling you how much energy you should have to do your exercise. And I'm sure that there are people that live and die by that number. We should get into that after. But for me, it was never like, I never really listened to what it was telling me my readiness was, for the reasons that you mentioned. Running for me is an ultimate therapy outlet. I do it mostly because of how I feel after I get that runner's high, and then I could take over the world. So I love that. I also obviously enjoy the physical benefits. I like knowing that my heart is getting stronger and that kind of thing. But if I lived by my readiness score, or if I listened when it was like, take it easy today, I would never exercise. So I really like that you said that it's, if you want to run, then you should run. Is that going to take a toll? If I keep pushing through that, even though basically this watch is telling me that I shouldn't be doing it for like consecutive days, is that eventually going to take a toll on my energy? Should I be throwing in a rest day? What are your thoughts?
You should be throwing in a rest day here and there, right? I think the thing to remember when it comes to training and recovery is that, recovery, there's in order to really achieve sustainable high performance, you need to optimize performance in 4 domains. the physical domain, the cognitive, the social, and the emotional. And there is no hierarchy to those four domains, right? And they're all interconnected. So, how we feel physically impacts how we feel cognitively, impacts our social aspects, and how we feel emotionally. How we feel cognitively can impact our physical domain. It can impact our emotional domain, our ability to socialize. So all of these things are intertwined, and knowing thyself is the first step in understanding when I need a day off or what I need to do on that day off, right? If I am pushing physically, and I'm getting these warning lights, right? Like these, check engine lights every day for 3 weeks, I probably should check in with myself and see what bucket needs to be filled, right? Maybe it is taking a day off from exercise, or maybe it's doing a different type of exercise, right? If you're somebody that needs to exercise every day, that's fine, but maybe change the method of exercise. Or when I was working with one of our Olympians here in the United States, she had this thing where she had to work out every single day. I have to work out every day, Brandon, every day. I'm like, okay, I get that. That's for you to be cognitively, right? So what I did was okay, we're going to work Monday morning, and we worked out Monday morning. And I said, we're going to work out Tuesday night was our next workout. So she got what she wanted, which was to work out every single day. And I got what I wanted. I got 36 hours of rest for her.
I never even considered doing it that way, which seems so obvious now, but I am one of those people. I have to move. I don't have a television in my house because I figure that's just taking time away from, my exercise. But really, I just love being outside. But I've never structured it like a morning workout and then an evening workout the subsequent day. You just kind of blew my mind there. That's what I'm going to do now. I just kind of run whenever I feel like it. I never tell myself I ever have to run. It's just like, it's so part of me. I've done it forever that I'm just going to head out and run whenever. So take my dog out and that kind of thing. It's just fun, which is for people who are like, I don't know how running is fun for you, but it really is. You did touch on something else that I think is really interesting, and that is how alcohol affects your metrics. So I very rarely drink. I will have maybe an alcoholic beverage once a year. It's just not common for me. And a lot of that is, even though I'm not an athlete, is because of performance. Like I don't want to feel bad the next day. And on days that I have had alcohol, I've looked at my stats, and it's definitely, my heart rate's higher. My sleep quality was absolutely in the garbage. And for me, that's like really all I need to not want to drink. My personality is also just quite extroverted normally. So I don't need anything to get me out of my shell. That's for sure. How does alcohol affect our bodies?
There is a significant cost of doing business when we consume alcohol. Now, there are some caveats to this, right? There is an enormous social aspect in some circles to consuming alcohol.
Absolutely.
I do not drink a lot of alcohol at all. I probably have maybe one a month, maybe. So I understand that, like I said, like there is a social aspect to it. You can go out with friends and have a glass of wine, and the impact's going to be very, very minimal, right? The closer I have that glass of wine to bed, the impact's going to be a little bit greater from a nighttime physiology standpoint, right? So personally, when it comes to caffeine and when it comes to alcohol, I try not to do any of that past like 2:00 in the afternoon, right? Like on a weekend. Sometimes though, if I go out to dinner, I'll have a glass of wine and that's it. And I'll drink it very slow and take my time. So I try to minimize and mitigate the impact as much as possible, right? So those are things that I put in my mind, right? Because that's just me, just kind of like that, how you do it, because that's just you, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the cost of doing business, if we start to have more than one glass of wine, one alcoholic beverage, et cetera, is that you start to impact your sleep. Specifically, you skip over the regenerative stages of sleep. Yes, you might not wake up all night. Yes, you might have thought that you slept soundly, However, you have skipped over some of those beneficial stages. So it's essentially junk sleep, right? It's not beneficial at all from that standpoint. Alcohol has a very strong effect on tissue and muscle tissue and connective tissue and can impact that. And if that's what's running everything, right? If we're trying to be high performing individuals and we are putting our connective tissue, we are not stacking the odds in our favor of a successful performance, then, we're kind of testing the odds there, right? So there's a dehydration aspect. There's a rest aspect. There's a stress aspect to alcohol. There's, like I said, the tissue piece of it. So there's just a lot of downside to it. Now, again, is there a net positive? Maybe, right? I kind of equate it to like food, right? There are comfort foods. Comfort foods might be some of the most unhealthy foods possible, right? If we look at it in the physical domain. Right. But if we look at it from a social and emotional domain, they're called comfort foods for a reason. So if I'm very stressed out and I go and have, eggplant parmesan and a small glass of wine, that's comforting to me, right? So I was filling my emotional bucket and my cognitive bucket. And I my physical probably went down a little bit, but I probably had a net positive because of all the other boats kind of rose, right? It's very convoluted. It's not a very easy equation to figure out, but it's important to realize that there is more to performance than just the physical domain. Sometimes we can elevate our physical performance through other methods, right? And indulging in some of those things from time to time.
I believe moderation is absolutely key. That's been the key for my success over the last couple of years. I feel like I have an abundance of energy. Yeah. And I think it stems from that. What if someone's having more than one alcoholic beverage every day, like someone has a stressful job and that's how they unwind. Like you said, it's kind of like a comfort food for them. Can you speak to like daily consumption of alcohol? Like, because if one or two drinks is decreasing your sleep quality and you're having alcohol every night, because that is fairly common for a lot of people, what long-term effects does that have if you're never really getting great rest? Or does your body just adapt?
No, you don't adapt, right? You cannot adapt. You cannot get used to, like, humans think they can, right? That's their rationale, right? It's like, I got really good at, performing on 4 hours of sleep. You can't do that, right? That's like saying, I'm going to go get really good at drinking and driving. So I'm going to drink every night in practice. You just can't do that. That's not how it works. Again, there's a cost of doing business here, right? And if you have to rely on alcohol every night to wind you down or to push you parasympathetically because your job is so heavily sympathetic, there's a lot of other things you can do, right? We spoke about exercise. We spoke about yoga, right? Meditation, mindfulness. If you listen to, late night television hosts, and you ask them, what do you do for a living? They will tell you, my job is to get people to forget about their problems for 1 hour, right? So it's to unplug and disconnect and forget about all those things. And there's a lot of things you can do to help unload and help metabolize that stress from the day, aside from drinking alcohol, right? Because comfort foods are okay, but it's not good every day, right? If my comfort food is a donut, that doesn't mean I have carte blanche to have 12 donuts every single day because I lead such a stressful life, right? That's a problem there. So it goes back to your moderation comment, right? Everything in moderation. Yeah, there's certainly relying on alcohol, relying on something to help you get to sleep and wind down every night, aside from some of those other things I mentioned, is not conducive to high performance and a healthy lifestyle.
It can be challenging for me. It's not because I've always really just not consumed alcohol. So for me, it is easy in social situations to be like, I actually don't drink, but for sure, a lot of people, that is where they get, their social quality. So I like that you're talking about different buckets and satisfying different buckets, because I think that I live in my physical domain more than other ones. So should try to be a little bit more well balanced. We also talked about sleep. And this one is so interesting for me because the thing that I did when I got my Aura ring, because I've had it for years and years, is I started noticing the impact of sleep quality on every facet of my life. It affects me so deeply. I am considerably more fatigued, less energetic, more irritable. Like if I don't get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, then I don't feel like myself, quite frankly. And then when I talk to people, because I get teased about this quite a bit, because I like set up my sleep environment and I like things a certain way. People are like, you're a nerd, but I just really want to take care of myself. You said that if people are continually not getting sleep, they might just like kind of think that they're adapting, but they're actually not. Do we all need 7 to 8 hours of sleep, or can some people, get 5 and feel alive and still be really healthy?
The 8 hours of sleep is usually a standard number because most people, around 70% of the population, need between 7 to 9 hours. It's that bell curve, right? Some people need a little bit more. Some people could probably get by with a little less. There's a colleague of mine, he passed away a couple of years ago, but his name was Dr. William Dement. And Bill Dement was considered the father of sleep medicine. He discovered REM. He's that good, right?
Okay.
He was that guy, right? He was like 91 when he passed away, and he and I were colleagues at Stanford together, and we partnered on some research as well. And he was telling me one time when I was over at his house, he was saying, Brandon, he goes, I spent the earliest part of my career traveling all around the globe, finding these people that said they only slept like 3 hours a night and had these really high functioning lives. And I said, what did you find out? He goes, I found out it was the biggest waste of time and money in my entire career. He goes, that humans are really bad at understanding how much sleep they get when they're tired and how much sleep they need, right? And what's interesting is some of the research that we did and he did at the Stanford Sleep Center, what they would do is they would do these sleep satiation studies where they would ask people before the study, how much sleep do you need? And people might say, I need 6 hours a night. And then after they study, when they pay back all this sleep debt, they would ask them again, how much sleep do you need? And typically almost everybody underestimated by 2 hours how much sleep they needed. So those that originally said they needed 6 hours came in and said they needed 8. Those that needed 7, they thought, sure, I need 7, needed 9, right? I know personally I need 9. I don't get 9, but I know I need 9, right? Because I do become irritable, anxious. You make more mistakes. You're not as cognitively sharp. But like we were talking about, we renorm to that fatigue, right? It's kind of like the example I always use is like looking at a picture of yourself from 10 years ago. You're like, whoa, I look really young there, right? But because we wake up and renorm ourselves every morning, when we look in the mirror, we don't see those small, tiny changes in aging that take place on a daily basis. We renorm ourselves. Not only until we look at a picture from 10 years ago do we see that big difference. Same thing with sleep. We continually get, 5 hours of sleep a night, and we kind of renorm ourselves to that fatigue that occurs and builds up over time. So we think we are high functioning individuals, but in actuality, we're not.
And people oftentimes don't even know how good they can feel if they just got more sleep. I'm biased because I'm all about sleep. Is sleep something that you can catch up on, or once it's gone, it's gone? Like, does napping have an effect and, make your heart rate lower or that kind of thing?
So yeah, sleep, you can catch up on sleep. So that's paying back your sleep debt. And the sleep debt ceiling, we believe, is right around 50 hours. So you can pay back that 50 hours over time. It takes time, right? It's more than just a weekend of sleeping in. But yeah, you can pay it back. Naps will help contribute to that payback time. The problem with naps, it's not really a problem. The only time I would be wary of a nap if it interferes with your ability to get a good night's rest.
Right.
So, taking a nap like at 8 at night, I wouldn't recommend, right?
Right.
Because then you might wake up at 9:30 and be like, wow, I can't get to sleep, right? So that you can pay it back. But once the tank is full, you can't store it.
I wish I could. I really wish I could. There's sometimes I just love to be up for 48 hours straight just doing an activity. That'd be amazing. I listen to my body so much more now, which is interesting because I also rely on the data. I've actually changed a little bit because before, the first thing I would do when I would wake up would be to look at what the data is presenting, and it would kind of help me determine how I felt. And now I don't look at it right away. I assess how I feel when I wake up. Do I feel rested? And then at some point during the day, my curiosity is piqued, and I'll go have a look at it. But I'm not typically a napper, but if I do want to nap, I'm my body is telling me I need some rest. So I'll get some shut eye in that case. This month at Cronometer, we're discussing energy. This is one of our most interesting topics, I think, because we're always getting questions about energy. And when I was younger, I thought that it was for me, this infinite resource. And it's not at all. I've definitely realized in the last couple of years that it's actually pretty finite. But I have noticed ways that I can optimize it. And obviously working at Cronometer, I track my diet. So I'm getting all my micronutrients and macronutrients and that kind of thing. In your work, have you noticed ways that people can optimize their energy? We did talk about getting adequate sleep and not consuming a lot of alcohol. What things can people be doing today or building towards today that's going to give them more energy and make them feel vital and thrive and that kind of thing?
Well, I think we touched on it, but I don't think we went really into enough depth on it. And we mentioned that sleep gives you energy. And I think the important thing to remember is that, our brain's preferential fuel is going to be glucose. Yes, I know it can run on ketones and those types of things. I get that, right? But preferentially, the brain likes glucose. And glucose typically comes from carbohydrates, right? Now, there's many types of carbohydrates, but that's a whole nother discussion, right? Carbohydrate, people say I'm not eating any carbohydrates. I'm like, you're not eating any vegetables? They're like, no, I'm eating vegetables. I'm like, well, then you're eating carbohydrates, right? Yes. So there's important things to unpack there. But when we are sleep deprived, we actually impair our carbohydrate metabolism. So our carbohydrate metabolism is not functioning as optimally as it could. As a result, when we are sleep deprived, we gravitate toward highly processed junk foods that will spike our glucose quickly, right? That's a dangerous thing, right? So number one on my list is sleep, right? Mm-hmm. That's one thing to give you more energy. 2, hydration. Hydration is enormous, right? If we dehydrate by just a small amount, 3%, our cortisol levels, which is a stress hormone, gets elevated, right? Stress, we know, zaps us, right? It does not make us feel good. So sleep, hydration, and then obviously optimizing nutrition and eat stuff that will sustain us throughout the day and provide us with energy, right? That's kind of the key. So many times we rely on other things to give us energy, right? Mm-hmm. So I mentioned the sympathetic and parasympathetic, right? Many times the world runs on caffeine, right? Yes. So people will consume energy drinks and caffeine. Caffeine is a sympathomimetic drug, meaning it mimics the sympathetic nervous system. That's why it's called sympathomimetic. So it gives you the feeling of energy. Same thing with these energy drinks that have all these crazy high amounts of B vitamins. 8,000% of B vitamins. B vitamins do not give you energy. Vitamins do not give you energy, but they play an important role in the energy pathways as cofactors. So you can consume a lot of B vitamins, all of a sudden you feel alive, right? But that is not essentially what is happening there. So what are the things? Sleep is an anchor to energy. Hydration, ideal nutrition, exercise, right? That's a big one. Being able to, again, meditation, right? So much literature is out there on on meditation and its impact on providing people energy and sustainment throughout a day. Like these things have been time tested for thousands of years, but we as a society seem to ignore these because we say we don't have time. I don't have time to meditate, right? If you actually meditated, you probably would be more productive, have more energy, and probably could get more done in a smaller and truncated amount of time. So, these things are well worth doing to provide you with that, like that energy, like you mentioned.
I don't meditate. Obviously, I should start if there's, there's a lot of science to meditation. For me, sitting still is the challenge. So I'm curious about this. Can you make some recommendations? Because what I like doing as the podcast host here is I really like an action item from every guest that I've had, because we've had amazing people lined up out of the gate. And last month I told Rob Wolf about hydration, and I was like, I got to start salting my food. So I have way more energy, which is interesting because I would have never equated salt to being hydrated. The opposite. Tell me about meditation and what I should do, Brandon.
So similar to this, you use the Aura Ring. You've used it for years. You have a lot of comfort there. If you open your Aura app and go to the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little plus, and you can click on unguided session. And you can click on a 5-minute unguided meditation session and pick whatever type of sound you want in the background, like a water flow or like thunderstorms or whatever you choose to. And the idea is just to try and be in the present moment. Okay. That's all meditation is just being in the present. And most meditation anchors it around the breath, and just follow your breath. All you have to do is follow your breath. And then when your mind gets distracted, note it, say, I'm being distracted, and go back to following your breath, because your mind's going to be distracted. That's okay, right? Mm-hmm. We're not Buddhist monks, right? Sitting there almost in a state of Zen for 3 hours thinking about nothing. That's not what we're trying to accomplish. We're just trying to take a break, be mindful, be present, follow our breath, and then over time, just like endurance exercise or strength exercise or anything else, it becomes easier, right? And doing these 5-minute check-ins from time to time, if that's all you can do, even 1 minute is fine. 4 cycles of breath, even that is fine to do. But take some time to unplug, be mindful, be in the moment, and then that's it, and be on your way.
That's going to be my next thing. I'm going to commit to meditating, and I'm going to see how I feel. Because you hit the nail on the head. I feel like sometimes like I'm a dog chasing a squirrel. I'm like, okay, because I have good intentions towards, being mindful and taking a moment. And then all of a sudden I'm like, what am I supposed to be thinking about right now? Like, is nothingness black? And it's just this giant cycle in my head. I'm like, that was not effective at all. Like, you accomplished nothing. So I'll definitely have to try that. One of the questions that I have, so with Cronometer, basically what happens is people register for an account, and then they put in all of their unique metrics, like their height, their weight, their sex, all of that. And then it spits out a BMR, which is basal metabolic rate, sorry. And then we ask them if they want to sync a wearable or that kind of thing. And then some people, when they choose yes, then they're going to connect any of their devices. And then basically some people will then change their diet based on their exercise. And what I mean is, if I had a weight loss goal and I wanted to lose 10 pounds and I connected my device and it's telling me oh, you burnt 3,000 calories, and then I'm eating more calories because I technically had that in the bank. How should people be doing that, or should people be adjusting what they're eating to what their wearable is telling? Because I know I was talking to one of our partners, Don Saladino, and he's because he works with Aura as well, and he's yeah, I use it for cardio, but I don't use it for weight training because you're not actually supposed to. I know that you know Don too. That's how we met and he's great. So when people are trying to make these decisions about how many calories they should eat and they're listening to their wearable, but it's not tracking like their weight training, like how does that all work? I know that was a lot, but
this is the thing that people have to remember is all of these things are based on assumption, right? And when you start stacking assumption on assumption on assumption, then all of a sudden there's a lot of places that things can go wrong, right? So we have to remember that when I went on a run, I went on a walk this morning, right, before our podcast. And if I look at it, it's telling me that I burn, 2.41 miles, 229 calories. That is an assumption based upon my height, like you mentioned, my weight, and then the amount of metabolic activity, which I did, right? The other assumption is the calories in piece, is that they are saying, like, I threw a medium-sized frozen banana in my smoothie this morning. A medium-sized banana is 80 calories. How do they know that? Well, they took a bunch of what they thought was medium-sized bananas. They put them in a bomb calorimeter. They blew them up, and they measured the amount of energy it created to change one gram of water, 1 degree centigrade, right? Mm-hmm. So now I'm making an assumption that banana was 80 calories. The other assumption I'm making is that I'm pulling 80 calories from that banana. So depending on my gut microbiome, depending on all of those factors, I might pull 85. You might pull 72. Don might pull 81 and a half, right? That's the problem. That's what's so hard sometimes that yes, in the physics world, a calorie is a calorie is a calorie, 100%. But what we're forgetting is that how we extrapolate calories and how we extrapolate food is different on an individual basis. And if we keep stacking those assumptions, that can lead us down a road of uncertainty and error. And that's kind of the danger with these wearables, right? Mm-hmm. And then especially if you're not using it to track everything, now you're making other assumptions as well. So it just can be a dangerous endeavor to rely on technology let's just put it this way. Technology shouldn't give you the answer. It should help allow you to make better decisions, right? It's kind of like a weather report. There's an 80% chance of rain today. It's not telling me to get an umbrella or put on a raincoat. It's just telling me there's an 80% chance. And now it's my job to make the decision. Do I want to take an umbrella? Do I not? Like maybe 80 is not enough for me. Maybe you, like your threshold is 70. 70 or above, I'm always taking an umbrella. Maybe me, it's like 90, right? And everybody's air budget's going to be different. It's just all part of the decision-making process.
At the beginning of the podcast, you touched on the fact that you wear a chest strap. If someone is looking to really get this data as dialed as possible, you would recommend getting a chest strap?
I would recommend a chest strap. And depending on the type of exercise you do, the different brand might be better, right? So there's the two leaders in the industry are pretty much going to be Polar and Garmin. You know, if you're comfortable with the Garmin ecosystem, use that. If you're comfortable with the Polar ecosystem, do that. Just know that probably Garmin is going to perform better in a water environment. And if you swim in like oceans and things like that, definitely go Garmin. Polar does not do well in salt water. It does okay in pool water, right? If you do swimming mostly, they have what's called the Polar Variability, which actually goes on your temple and connects right with your goggles. That's going to give you really good fidelity if you're in a pool, right? And you don't want to wear a chest strap. So like there are options depending on like what environment do you train the most. If you're just going out and run, Polar's fine, Garmin's fine, doesn't matter. If I'm swimming in pool, I might go Verity, right? Or if I run and swim in a pool, maybe I'm just going to go with a Garmin. Then I only have to have one device, right? It depends on what do you want? How much you want to invest in wearable technology, and do you want to keep track of 2 wearables or 1? And then again, if I'm swimming in salt water, then I'll probably go with the Garmin as well.
Do you think that, because I don't really ever know what I'm training for, I just like feeling really good. Do you think that I should be changing? Because One of the podcasters I listen to and just love, and I've said this a billion times, but his name is Nick Bear, and he definitely trains, higher intensity some days, lower intensity others. Should I be looking at any data to determine which day I should be working harder or working on sprints as opposed to distance? Or is that just kind of how I feel as well?
So this is it. So in general, you could, if you're just training just in general for general health and well-being, feel free to mix it up as much as you want. Mm-hmm. If we're talking specifically to the individual, and this is unpacking, it's going to open up a whole nother box here, is that we're talking about training women, that's another box. Because what we're talking about here is, are we training around the menstrual cycle, right? Because there are certain times during the menstrual cycle in which we want to train strength, and which we want to train cardio, which we want to stay away from other types of movements, right? Because of a female's physiology provides them with what I call a sex advantage, because we know exactly what type of exercise they're going to be better at doing. So for instance, like right around day 14, which is ovulation, females have a spike in testosterone. That's a great time to be training strength, right? Because you have that testosterone peak. Guys, we don't know that. So it's a distinct sex advantage for women to say, hey, this is when we need to train this. Mid-luteal phase, we should be training that. Late follicular phase, here's what we should be training here. So we can actually we can map out your menstrual cycle and say, yeah, probably here's when you should be training cardio, because, you're able to mobilize fat better and you're able to tap into glucose better, right? Here's when we want to do more strength training. Here's where maybe we want to do kind of like low threshold training. So I know, again, I'm just trying to gave you a big...
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool stuff, right? That something which is often taboo to talk about, mm-hmm. right? But if we overlay that with your training, like this is the example I use. If you knew that your bank account yielded like 30% interest between this day and this day, wouldn't you put all your money in that bank account?
I would.
Same thing, right? If I know that this is a great time to train strength because I'm going to get great results, then shoot, let's train strength that day, right?
For me, I have an IUD. I have a hormonal IUD, so I have no idea. I'd be in the dark as well.
Changes everything.
So unfortunately, there's nothing I can implement from that. Although I feel like when I have more time, I'll be firing some questions your way, because that's so interesting. Anyway, one more question.
Yep.
And then I will let you go about your day, but this has been so interesting. In any of your research, have you noticed how supplements can affect energy or sleep or that kind of thing? Like, should people, in your opinion, will I get a better night's sleep basically if I'm having stuff like melatonin? Do you have any recommendations with those kinds of?
So the thing with melatonin, the people love melatonin.
They do.
People gravitate toward melatonin. People want a sleep supplement, and the very first ingredient they look for is melatonin. 100%. Here's the deal with melatonin. The recommended prescription for melatonin, right, is anywhere between 0.25 milligrams all the way up to 5 milligrams, right? That's a big, in some cases 6. That's a big range. So people are saying, well, shoot, why don't I just take 6, right? The side effect of consuming too much melatonin is that you cannot fall asleep. That's a side effect of too much melatonin. So that's why you have to be very careful with how much melatonin one consumes. Most of these supplements contain 1 gram to 3 grams, mm-hmm. maybe because they're not regulated, of melatonin. Most people don't need melatonin. Before you take melatonin, you should probably go see a sleep physician or sleep expert to say, I'm having trouble with sleep. And then they may not recommend melatonin, and they may give you a small amount first and then go from there. Okay. So typically, unless you're shifting time zones or anything like that, you probably don't need it. But again, leave that up to an expert to decide. But that's the dangerous thing is like, yeah, too much melatonin, you can't sleep. And that's a problem, right? So it probably only works in like 50% of the population at best.
That's so counterintuitive. It's funny because I've never taken melatonin. One of my friends, he does shift work and can't get to the pharmacy, and he's like, "I'm not sleeping well. Can I go get melatonin? Can you get me melatonin?" I'm like, "I don't know what I'm doing for you." Like I'm like looking at dosages and trying to decide which one to get, and it's just right there, just readily available, right on the shelf. So,
and shift work is different beast, right? Shift work or changing time zones, there's probably a need for that then. But again, getting the dosage is absolutely key. Going back to the other supplement piece, yeah, like for instance, magnesium glycinate is a type of magnesium which can help bring about a decent night's sleep, right? L-theanine is an amino acid which can help kind of unwind you, right? It is what is found in matcha tea, right? So you have caffeine in matcha tea, but you also have L-theanine, which is the combination of those gives people that what they often refer to as like a calm focus, right? So yeah, L-theanine and magnesium glycinate are probably the two most benign supplements that can potentially help give you a better night's rest.
awesome. You've given me so much to think about. I'm going to go out and buy a chest strap. I'm going to start meditating. This has all been very good for me. We'll have to check in another time and we'll see what happens because I think that, yeah, for me, like my biggest takeaway, I'm sure everyone will get so much information from this podcast, but my biggest one is maybe just chill out a little bit more than I do. So I'll add 5 minutes. I like baby steps. Working Cronometer is giving me baby steps. I started like tracking my calories, which I've did since I was like 16, and then started macronutrient tracking and now micronutrient tracking. And now I'm like wearing like 12 wearables, testing them. And it's been super fun. So thanks so much for being here, Brandon. You've been an amazing source of information and just a lovely guest. So
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
have a good day.
You too.
Bye.